Hi, I'm Dr. Sheldon Horowitz, and welcome to NCLE's Ask the Expert series. In response to a number of questions that we've received from parents through our email, I will be talking today about dysgraphia. Dysgraphia is the medical term that we use to describe a learning disability in writing, written expression. And as you can see, there are numbers of components that go into the writing process. It's not just picking up a pencil and jotting something down on a paper. There's a visual spatial component, there's a fine motor component, and there's a language processing component, an information processing component to the writing process. So let's look a little bit about each of those separately. Visual spatial processing in a person with dysgraphia is going to show up looking like they have difficulties perhaps discriminating between certain shapes. So they're going to look at a letter and not be able to necessarily tell if it's one letter versus another, numbers the same thing, even shapes, circles and squares and diamonds and those kinds of visual spatial discrimination tasks that are very important for learning. And clearly, one of the hallmarks of dysgraphia in school-age children and even children as they get older is that they have difficulty spacing. They have difficulty organizing themselves to keep their letters and numbers in an organized format, either across the line or in columns if it's numbers going down the page. In terms of fine motor, individuals with dysgraphia will often have difficulties with their grip. They'll often have difficulties holding on to a pencil. They'll grab it in the wrong place. It will be uncomfortable on the page. They may grab it too close to the tip. They may hold it too far back. They may squeeze it too hard, which will affect the way that they actually can manipulate the pen or the pencil. And letter forms, as they're drawing things, as they're writing their letters and numbers, are also often compromised. And because they're working so hard by virtue of their having dysgraphia, they're going to fatigue, they're going to get tired, they're not going to be able to finish tasks very often. In terms of language processing, individuals with dysgraphia often complain that they just don't know what to write. They don't know where to start the writing process. And that's the information processing difficulty that they have. Certainly, once they've written something, it's hard for them to go back in and self-check their work. Some individuals with dysgraphia, because their writing is so disorganized and they have so many inaccuracies, they can't even read back what they've written. So those are the kinds of things, the hallmarks of what we look for in dysgraphia. What are some of the things that we can do to help children with dysgraphia? Well, first, in the visual spatial area, for young children, we can give them paper that has lines that are a little bit raised, so they actually can feel when they're going out of the lines. That paper is available through both schools, and sometimes you can pick them up in an education products store. Large spaces between lines, that's the kind of thing that can sometimes help when children are positioning themselves and trying to form letters. And graph paper can sometimes really be helpful to keep children organized in their writing process. One of the easiest things to do is not to give them a writing utensil, but allow them to choose one by themselves. Very often, the child with dysgraphia will choose a thicker pencil or prefer to write with something that has a little bit of a texture to it or a rubberized feel. And helping them find a grip that's comfortable for them so they don't fatigue is often something that is often really helpful in that fine motor domain. By way of language processing, one of the most useful things, certainly as children get older, is to afford them opportunities to use a word processor, which diminishes the need for them to actually have to do the physical act of writing. Voice to print software that they can speak and it actually prints and they can edit is another useful tool. Providing individuals with an advanced organizer, give them a sense of what it is that they want to be writing about, help them find a way to organize those bits of information in keywords, and having them create a draft and then help them edit the draft so that they're not struggling with a finished product and trying to create something while they're also struggling with issues of fatigue, wondering what to write, and then looking at some of those spacing and discrimination issues. One of the things that we found to be really useful for individuals with dysgraphia is affording them an opportunity to and encourage them to write in cursive, to write in script. When you write in print, you're putting your pencil tip or your writing utensil on the paper and picking it up and then starting again and then picking it up and then starting again. But cursive actually allows the tip to stay on the paper, and by doing so it actually can be really helpful to an individual with dysgraphia. Try to minimize the amount of copying that they have to do at any given time because of the fatigue and because of how difficult it is in the language processing area. And certainly affording them extended time is something that can be really helpful. They're going to work more slowly by virtue of all of these visual, spatial, motor skill, and language processing issues.